Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking some Bears, some Bulls, some Blackhawks, all kinds of good stuff. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, so don't miss out. Head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, we are in the final phases of winter, and I know this because Cubs baseball is back.
It is really good to have baseball back, and I think that we were really looking forward to just seeing any sort of baseball action, whether or not it's spring training or not. So it always feels good. And being able to watch all the games on TV, you know, obviously I watched the first game yesterday against the San Francisco Giants, and just the vibes of baseball felt great. And I don't know if you heard, but I guess they broke a Cactus League record of attendance at Sloan Park on Saturday.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, single game Cactus League record at Sloan Park. Like over 16,000 people showed up. So people were ready to get back to the ballpark. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think pretty much it was universal that, you know, despite a lot of vocal anger towards the new rule changes, people were desperate for baseball to be back.
Yeah, and you know, I think you can look at a number of things. You can look at people's frustration with some of the rule changes. You look at people in this town that are frustrated with the teams for multiple reasons, but when that first spring training game comes along and we can watch baseball again, it's kind of like all of our concerns and our anger and our frustration kind of just go by the boards.
I would agree with that. You know, just everything will sort itself out, and just the game being back is what's important.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things we can say too is we can have a really good look at, like, at least on the, I mean, really for both the Cubs and the White Sox, there are several prospects that we can really keep an eye on. But, you know, on the Cubs side, we're seeing Pico Armstrong get some playing time. We're seeing Matt Mervis get some playing time. So those are two really important pieces. And obviously with the White Sox, you see Oscar Colas getting playing time, and he's very likely going to be your right fielder this year. So you obviously need to see what he can do. I mean, with Mervis, we don't know when he's going to be up exactly. I think it's fair to say that he's going to start the year in the minors. We know Pico Armstrong still needs some time. You know, Brennan Davis, is he healthy? We saw him play the other day, so you're getting to see him too. So that's kind of one of the things that I like watching in spring training, or some of those young prospects, guys that are either on the fringe or depth or, you know, long-term solutions. It's like, okay, you know, Dansby Swanson's going to get his at-bats. Yohan Moncada for the White Sox, and Grandal and Robert and Eloy, they're all going to get their at-bats. Obviously, Eloy is playing some right field, which makes some people a little uneasy. But for the most part, a lot of the veterans, you're like, all right, you get them their at-bats. It is cool to see some of the newcomers, like you see Dansby Swanson play in a Cubs uniform the first time, Cody Bellinger. But, you know, with the veterans, it's like, okay, get your at-bats, get your work in. But it's a lot of these fringe guys and some of the pitchers that I'm really excited watching.
Yeah, like a sod pitch today. It was nice to see Stroman got a little work yesterday. But what was real nice to see Trey Mancini swinging the bat well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't give crap about the stats. They don't mean anything from spring training. I mean, literally a guy that went hitless all spring training can go on to win the batting title.
Sure.
Is no bearing. But I look for how guys look at the plate. Are they comfortable? Sometimes guys are just working on some things, especially on the pitching end. Are they working on a new pitch? Are they just trying to, get comfortable, working on a new delivery? So spring training is just, going out there and getting physically ready for the season, because you don't get to work on that kind of stuff during the season, especially pitchers, because if you're starting pitcher, you've got your routine set. You got your 5 days, and most pitchers are like super big into routines. Is the day after the pitch they do, or the day after they start, they do this, and then the second day they do this, and then that for those 5 days they really have a routine, and they don't have the time to be able to work on some things. So spring training is that opportunity. The off season is that opportunity. And batters, I'm just kind of looking how are they swinging the bat? How are they looking? How's their eye for pitches? Are they being aggressive up there? It's just really looking for that comfort level and how smooth the swing looks. And Trey Mancini looks like the guy we saw a couple years ago in Baltimore. Granted, it's a small sample size, but he did look comfortable at the plate.
Yeah, I liked how Mancini looked. We had some really good at-bats from Ian Happ. Obviously, that's a big one, too.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way that looked. You saw Nico Horner hit a ball on the screws. His first at-bat, he had a line drive right up the middle. You saw Brennan Davis. Okay, the weird thing with Brennan Davis was he was rounding first when he should have just been running straight, because it looked like he thought that the ball got past the third baseman. It was a fair ball down the line, but the third baseman did stab at it and throw him out. So, if he's even running a little bit harder in a non-spring training game, that's probably a hit. But point being is, he made some solid contact, so you like to see that. But I think that there's a big element about this spring training, and that's the pitching across the board, because they got to get adjusted to this new pitch clock. And we already saw something big happen in a spring training game with the bases loaded, tied in the 9th inning, and a strike called on the batter, a strike 3 called. It was Braves and Red Sox, because he wasn't set. He wasn't in the box in time. So that's going to be a big adjustment, pitchers and hitters, really.
Yeah, we're 2 days in, and the stats are 34 clock violations and averaging 1.79 violations per game.
Which you can't be too surprised, right? This is brand new. I mean, the minor leaguers seem to have adjusted to it eventually, but for the big leaguers, especially for the veterans who have been around that are so used to their routine, it is going to take some getting used to.
Yeah, honestly, the hitters shouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, be in the box, man.
Yeah, it's just like, it's bad enough the pitchers take so much time between it, but like the batter, the one that gets me is when the pitcher just stares too long, and then the batter steps out of the box, and they both got to reset. And Oh my God, that drives me crazy. Like, I get it if you're standing there ready for a pitch and it just takes too long, and you're like, all right, you know what? But neither one should be doing it. Let's knock it off.
Yeah, I mean, do you really have to adjust your batting gloves every single time, even if you don't swing?
Like, I love baseball, but I like
nice flow.
I like a nice flow to a game.
I'm with you.
I just think back to like, being 45, there's like I remember games having a better flow. And sometimes I'm just like, is it me or like my bad memory? And it just, you go back and you watch old games and you're like, no, they really did have a better flow. And this is not a, well, the game sucks now compared to what I was. It just, the flow is different. The game's a lot different. And that's one of the things that I wish we could take from that era and bring back is the better flow to a game. I'm not gonna this is compare eras or anything. It just, I like the flow better that time period.
No, I'm with you. And I kind of liked watching these first few games. I only saw a little bit of the second one. I was out most of the day, but I saw all the first one. And I gotta admit, I kind of liked the flow. It's just pitch, get right back to it, pitch, get right back to it, pitch, get right back to it. And there's something to be said about the broadcasting aspect of it too, because there's a lot less time where the producer in the truck needs to be like, all right, he's resetting again. Go find some bachelorette party to show in the stands. Now go cut to George Costanza with ice cream sundae all over his face. And, oh, there's the kid eating all the cotton candy. It's more focused consistently on the action because there's a lot less time to just have to go somewhere else while the pitcher and batter are getting reset. You know what I mean?
Right. But it is nice to have the game back. It's already frustrating though to see Suzuki with an injury.
Yeah, and here's the thing, the type of injury that he has, those can be really, really, really tricky. Because listen, he could be perfectly fine in a little bit, or it could be a lingering problem. And I think people were saying, he got too big in the offseason, which I don't want to demonize him or say like, oh, he was wrong for getting big in the offseason. But, you wonder what kind of effect that had on him. And here's the thing, too. He is scheduled to play in the WBC. So, he's one of your most important players, and you don't want to see something already happen.
Right. You definitely don't want to see things happen. You missed him for a chunk of time last year to injury. He's a good player. You just need him to be healthy and get all of his at bats to really optimize his at bats that he has, because it's going to take. He's switching leagues. It's going to take time for him to get acclimated to the MLB. And
we saw last year too.
Yeah, we saw some good things last year, but there was things that definitely needed to work on. And you were hoping for a full healthy season this year, and it could happen. The season hasn't even started yet, but first opportunity, and he's already got an oblique injury, which is just not what you want to see.
Yeah, and like I said, those obliques are tricky. So, you hope for the best. He's getting imaging, and we're going to know more this week. And you're just like, really? Already? There's something wrong. But again, hopefully it's not too serious. I mean, you need him in that lineup because he's going to be one of your big run producers. That's the goal, at least. He is projected by several projections, excuse me, to be the home run leader on the team. So he's kind of important.
Yep.
So if he doesn't play, if he's out, this is obviously jumping way ahead, but let's say he wasn't ready to play on opening day. And again, completely hypothetical, not trying to draw conclusions, but if he wasn't going to play on opening day, who would you put in right field?
You could put Morel out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You could maybe shift Bellinger over and then put Morel in center.
You could. But I would rather have Suzuki out there.
Oh, obviously, yeah. or if, Brennan Davis smashes, but I still don't think he's going to make the big league club right away. I mean, if he wasn't injured, I think we would have seen Brennan Davis in the bigs already, but he is working back from injury. So he's going to need some time in the minors, I think, to work on that. So, I mean, it's not like you don't have options, but it's far and away the most ideal to have Suzuki out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's in the Cubs have a nice roster of players right now, but it's not a roster that's going to compete for a World Series, probably. But to really get going and really, optimize their chances of making the postseason and making a push in the postseason, you need some key guys to be healthy and productive. And Seiya Suzuki is one of those guys.
Right. And, just to kind of go on this topic too, just is the whole Cubs roster. And I look at it and, I try to be optimistic in terms of them being competitive, being not a bottom feeder, being entertaining to watch, being a higher floor team. And I think those are all in play for the Cubs. But I've said this before, I'll say it again. Look at what they have, but look at what the freaking Padres and the Dodgers and the Braves and the Yankees and the Astros and the Phillies have. I mean, the Cubs have a nice team, but can you compare our lineup to the Phillies, who have multiple 30, 40 plus homer guys, or the Dodgers where you have Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts? Or look what the Padres just did. They gave out another massive extension to Manny Machado. You're going to have a team that's eventually going to get Fernando Tatis back, plus Manny Machado, plus Xander Bogaerts. I mean, and that's just a handful of what's in their lineup. Those are like their main guys. Oh, don't forget Juan Soto too.
Yeah,
we don't have that kind of talent.
I mean,
that's just the reality of it.
Yeah. And it's as these guys are signing like lifetime deals or lifetime of their prime, it really changes the dynamic of how you build a franchise.
Okay, I want to add something in here to that point. Do you think that in 5-6 years the scope is going to change again? Because here's what I'm thinking. In 5-6 years, Manny Machado, he's going to regress because of age. Same thing with Xander Bogaerts. Same thing with some of these other guys, like Carlos Correa. I mean, obviously his new deal's a lot shorter, but if he's got injury problems, he might regress sooner. And if he regresses sooner, even though the Twins deal isn't what he was originally going to get with the Mets or the Giants, one could say like, look, this guy was originally going to sign for what, 13 years, 12, 13 years.
Yep.
Could you imagine if that was I think teams are going to realize, you know what, we can't be giving out these deals because listen, for the next 3, 4, 5 years, the Padres are in great shape to win a World Series. But man, after those few years, I think they are going to be screwed. They're going to have no farm system. They're going to be owing all this money to guys that are past their prime on ridiculous deals. I just think that's going to cause things to change again down the road in a few years.
Absolutely. And I think teams are going to realize that. And if you win a World Series, you can sort of justify it.
Sure, of course.
Because winning a championship is really hard.
Yes, it is.
You can put together the best team possible. And if a couple of guys just don't live up to their potential, or there's injuries, or, fluky things, or
look at the Dodgers every year.
Yeah. Or you just run into a team that just had your number.
Sure.
And anything can happen. It's
one
tough.
Bounce doesn't go your way. One pitcher has a meltdown of a game.
Yeah. It's just hard to win a championship. So if you win one, I guess you can justify it and be like, oh, okay, well, we won a championship, and then deal with the consequences of those the back half of those contracts.
And listen, right now, I'm not blaming the Padres at all for doing what they're doing. They're going all in, and I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that is hungry for a championship.
Yeah, they've never won one. They want one, and in their situation, they kind of have to build this super team because they share their division with the Dodgers. That team could have multiple division titles by now if they didn't play in the same division of a team that regularly wins like 105 plus games every year.
Yeah. So it's I don't blame them at all, but you're right. It's going to be a problem at the end. I mean, just look at the Jason Hayward contract and how that handcuffed the Cubs in a lot of ways for a number of years.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at a bunch of other look at Eric Hosmer. That was like the Padres' like big first signing, and they had to shell him off eventually.
Yep. So I don't know if the league will finally just go, hey, you know what? It's not worth it on these contracts, or if they're just willing to keep doing it and then decide, hey, it's worth competing in this window, and then tanking, rebuilding, and then coming back once those contracts you're out from underneath those contracts. I don't know. It's the future is hazy, but I would think that all of these things become cyclical, and and who knows? I mean, sometimes it takes the collective bargaining agreement to knock these things off. Look at the NHL. The NHL finally had to step in and be like, hey, these long deals are circumventing the rules we had in place, so they don't let you do those anymore.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe baseball, the collective bargaining agreement comes along and says, listen, no more of these 13-year deals.
Maybe. And here's a reality for the Cubs. Because of all these big deals and all these extensions and these lockups, two things. One, every minute you spend not extending a player, the higher their price is going to be driven up. I hope they know that. I'm sure they do, but you nudge in the direction of Ian Happ and Nico Horner in particular. Their prices are going to be driven up as we go further. And here's the other thing. The Cubs are going to require two things to land more superstar power. They're either going to have to develop it themselves and hope like a guy like Pete Crow Armstrong is one of those guys, or somebody else in the system, or they're going to have to trade for one. Because you know what? Look at how many position player superstars right now. They're locked down.
Yep.
They're locked in.
So Ian Happ's the tough one. I feel like Nico Horner, you're like, okay, we're locking him up. I like Ian Happ a lot, but your best future prospects are all outfielders.
Well, I think PCA's got center covered, right?
Mm-hmm. Brennan Davis is coming.
I just don't know if Brennan Davis is going to be a regular contributor in the big leagues. The injuries are piling up.
I mean, just like 2 years ago, he was a can't miss prospect.
Well, things change. Things change. I don't know. I think every passing day I get a little more. I'm not trying to write him off, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm quite as sold on him as other people are. A few years ago I was, but right now I'm not so sure. I am not so sure. And back issues don't get better.
Well, you got Kevin Alcantara,
who I
And
really like. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Davis.
Canario and Owen Casey, like they're all outfielders.
And I think Canario and Casey are going to be trade bait.
So, I mean, you've got 5 of your top 10 farm system players are outfielders. And you have Seiya Suzuki, who you've got for another couple of years. So the issue for me is Ian Happ is if you sign him to a long-term deal for big money, is he blocking the path of somebody else?
Well, maybe it's possible. And this is thinking way ahead here. You do have a DH now, so you could potentially get creative with how you approach this going forward. I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, but I'm a little scared about some of our position player prospects. If you ask me where my confidence lies in the farm system, far and away, it's the pitching. I feel much more confident about this pitching being effective than I do the position players. Because we've had some bad injury luck with a lot of these position players. Ed Howard, Brennan Davis, Miguel Amaya, Alexander Canario. They've all sustained significant injuries, and that worries me. It does. And I don't know. Maybe I'm undervaluing, but I look at some of the ceilings of some of those guys, and I don't see all-star potential with a number of these guys. Like Owen Casey, he's a good on-base machine, but can he hit? Maybe he can. I like James Triantos. He's an infielder, but he's way down there. Obviously, Christian Hernandez, another infielder, way down there. I don't know. Here's the big thing. We had gems when we rebuilt with Theo Epstein. Chris Bryant was the top prospect in baseball. Kyle Schwarber was one of the top prospects in baseball. Jorge Soler was one of the top prospects in baseball. Anthony Rizzo way back was one of the top prospects in baseball.
He who shall not be named was one of the top prospects in baseball when the Cubs traded from the A's for him.
Correct. Yes. See, and I've been typically talking very high about this farm system, but I think as time goes on, I'm starting to realize that while there is potential here, it is nowhere near collectively what we had under Theo Epstein. Those were gem prospects we had. They got potential. They might be good, but there's a little more uncertainty here. At least P. Crow Armstrong, his stock is really growing. He was named, I think, by Fangraphs or somebody like the 14th prospect in all of baseball. Like him, I feel pretty good about. I really like Kevin Alcantara, but some of the others, again, I'm not writing anybody off. I don't know. I really don't know.
I'm more optimistic than you are, but I think we can both agree that this season in the minors is going to be huge, kind of prognosticator in how this Cubs rebuild is going to look.
No question.
I mean, if Brennan Davis comes back and looks like he did before the injury, I think the arrow just shoots up to the moon. If Brennan Davis comes back and looks like he did before, PCA continues like he did, and you see guys that are in the lower levels make those progressions, you go, okay, all right, I'm liking where this is going. But if you see regression as far as injuries for Davis and Howard, and guys don't take those big step forwards, or they move to the next level in baseball, but they don't dominate like they did in the lower levels, those are bad signs.
Right. And again, one of my primary concerns with Davis is the injuries. That's where a lot of my concerns lie. And, I remember, and I'm sure you do too, Jorge Soler dealt with a number of injuries in the minors. I mean, you remember that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of circumstances with Jorge Soler. I mean, to be honest, he never really fit the mold of what Theo Epstein was trying to do, even though he was one of the first like bigger name prospects with the Cubs.
I mean, they took a swing on him and he was so young. What was he, like 16 going on 17 when they signed him?
He was very young, but his ceiling was very, very high when they signed him. And all I'm trying to say is like you saw Jorge Soler have some good moments with the Cubs, but he didn't put together that complete, package that we were hoping to get.
Right. I mean, all the tools were there.
Right.
You were like, this guy could be a monster, and he ended up being his home run power is incredible.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
He just never could put the whole package together.
Right. And to me, it's one of those things where you feel a bit more skeptical with some of this stuff because you look at some of the other prospects in baseball and you look at what we had under the Epstein regime, and you see some of the gem prospects and they're constantly making highlight reels. But the nice thing about that is you're seeing Pico Armstrong being involved more and more on that. And again, I want to emphasize this. I really feel good about the pitching infrastructure. Like, if you ask me where my biggest, my greatest optimism is for the Cubs farm system, I put a lot of it in the pitching. I really do.
The pitch lab is working.
Yeah. And I think that they hired the right people, including Carter Hawkins, from organizations like Cleveland that know how to do this sort of thing. And the fact that they spent most of their draft capital this year on rebuilding the pitching infrastructure, you see the emphasis and work that they're putting into it. You're seeing the kind of arms that they're getting, and you're seeing the people that are making this happen. That, to me, makes me more optimistic. Plus, you look at last year, you look at what you saw, the growth from Justin Steele, and you saw the growth from just even coming over from the Yankees, coming right to the big leagues with Hayden Wesneski, somebody we didn't really know much about. And then he comes over, you're like, oh, wow, this kid is something. So you look at that kind of thing. And even with some of the veterans, like Drew Smiley had a really good year, and that makes you feel better about it.
Not to go off on a tangent here. You probably already knew this. Do you know who Brennan Davis's dad is?
I feel like I should know this, but I don't.
Reggie Theus.
That's right.
I didn't know that.
I forgot about that.
He wasn't a part of his life at all, but he is his biological father.
Yeah, isn't that something? And I really hope Brennan Davis becomes something. I'm really rooting hard for the guy. That's the case with all these prospects. I'm really rooting for them to be something. And listen, we know that they're not all going to pan out. Like, we know that for a fact. They're not all going to pan out.
Never do.
And the more you have and the system is deep, the better it can be. And I am confident that you're going to see Kevin Alcantara really rise in the ranks this year in the prospect rankings. But I pray that Brennan Davis can stay healthy. And the same with Ed Howard too. And the same with Miguel Amaya. Miguel Amaya has been around a while and the talent is there, but the injuries are just crippling.
Yep. What else do we have with the Cubs? Kyle Hendricks threw off a mound.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Debuted some new mechanics. I don't know how that's going to look, but I think
he's gonna be throwing 100 miles an hour now.
How funny would that be? He's like, yeah, I just unlocked the power of the crystals. Yeah, I locked myself in a sensory deprivation cabin for 3 days and came out throwing 100.
He went on his own darkness retreat and he found it.
He started dating a witch.
Ye be a witch. I really hope that he can come back and
Kyle-
pitch more like Kyle Hendricks.
Kyle, how did you know that your new girlfriend was a witch? Well, she weighed less than a duck.
Oh, and the curl-toed shoes. You see Kyle Hendricks ride to Wrigley Field on a broom.
It's his girlfriend drops him off, and swoops it on the broom, drops him off.
And he's just got that same straight Kyle Hendricks looking face expression as he gets off. Can we agree that Kyle Hendricks might be one of the most likable Cubs ever?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, very nice, very funny in a dry kind of like sense of humor, witty, but very friendly guy. Like, yeah, definitely likable. I mean, I'm
Very
rooting for him.
chill.
I mean, I'm totally rooting for him to come back, but I'm not counting on it.
You know, if he can just be decent, like I'm not asking for like the days of 290 to 311 ERAs and FIPS and all that stuff, but if he can come back and be like a 380, 390 ERA FIP type pitcher as like a 5-starter or like even a 6-starter in this case, I think we take that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, we take that. But what?
Sorry, go ahead.
What if he does come back though? What if it truly was all related to injuries and he comes back and puts up just really good Kyle Hendricks numbers?
Well, then you have some interesting things to talk about in your rotation, because what we know right now is that the 5th spot is going to be between Sampson and Wisniewski and Assad, right? I mean, that's really what we're trying to figure out. And I think it's probably safe to assume that Stroman's going to be the opening day starter.
Probably.
Safe bet, right? If it were me, my top 4, I would go Stroman, Steele, Tyone, Smiley. And as long as Stroman and Steele and Tyone and Smiley are healthy, they're going to be in that rotation. Now, the one I think question might be is, will Drew Smiley replicate what he did last year? You would hope so, but I think that's one of, like, I'm not too worried about Marcus Stroman putting up numbers. He consistently puts up pretty much the same numbers year in, year out. Jamison Tyone, I think, will be solid. And then Justin Steele, the way he pitched in the second half is really got me excited for what he can do. I think the biggest mystery, in my opinion, is can Drew Smiley replicate it? And then who's going to be the 5-starter? Those are my biggest questions before Kyle Hendricks comes back.
What if he comes back and gives you a 3.3 ERA, 7 Ks per 9, under 2 walks per 9, and home runs per 9 of 1.25, and a K rate of 19%, and a walk rate of 4.5%. And
I mean, I'd be thrilled.
And a FIP of 3.8.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Kyle Hendricks we know.
I mean, what's crazy is, like, his K rate really has been steady. The walk rate jumped a little bit. It was the home runs were what jumped up.
Yeah. And I mean, you remember in 2019 when his home run rate was like ridiculous, and then we all realized, oh wait, they're juicing the crap out of these balls. But then he struggled with it the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, Like, I mean, his home run per nine for his career is 0.45, 0.85, 0.71, 1.1, 0.99, 0.97, 1.11, and then to 1.54 and 1.60.
Yeah.
The walks increased. I mean, all those just pointed to not hitting his mark.
Well, and that's the thing with Kyle Hendricks too, is he has no room for error. The type of pitcher he has, you're not throwing 99 miles an hour with sink. You can miss your spot and still get good results. Whereas if you miss your spot with an 87 mile an hour fastball, well, guess what? That's going down Kenmore Avenue.
Yeah. And I mean, what if it's just all mechanical issues related to injury? I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Sure. I mean, we won't know until we see him pitch again.
And I don't know when that's going to be, but it's I mean, you feel more optimistic because the progression he's shown has all been positive.
Yeah, you haven't heard of any big setbacks. He was really positive talking about it at Cubs convention. So there's a lot of good things surrounding it.
And he was really good talking about it this weekend. He said, it's been 7.5 months, not that I'm counting. And like, he's very positive about it. And part of that's his personality, but you're not hearing anything negative about it. And that's a good sign. It's a really good sign. And the good thing is the Cubs sort of made themselves, I'm not saying bulletproof, but they don't need him. If he comes back and pitches well, that's just a good problem to have. But
he'd be a luxury in the regular season.
Yeah. But if he doesn't come back, or he comes back and just doesn't look good, they're prepared.
Right. You have a rotation already, and you have potentially more pitching prospects like Jordan Wicks coming up this year. Now, I will say this. Let's say the Cubs do have a decent year and they get to the postseason and Kyle Hendricks does look solid. Kyle Hendricks has had a pretty good go in the postseason in his career.
Yeah, the guy's got ice water in his veins.
Right. I mean, we all remember the pennant clincher, and he's done more than just the pennant clincher. Remember, he pitched in Game 7 of the World Series and was
shouldn't have gotten taken out.
He got pulled early, but and it might not have been his best if you actually go back and watch it. But he did. He was charged with 2 runs, I think, or I don't know. Was that second run the wild pitch? I don't know if that was charged to Hendricks or not, but let me go look. But either way, you get my point. He's pitched well in other postseason games, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Let's see, Kyle Hendricks. And remember, game 3 of the World Series, he didn't go as deep, but he didn't let up any runs. That was a 1-0 loss of the World Series that year. But, again, that would be something that a lot of things have to go in certain directions, even think about that kind of thing, obviously. But, you do think about that stuff.
Oh,
so
definitely.
yeah, he only gave up 1 earned run in the World Series. So that wild pitch was not charged to Hendricks, which it shouldn't have been. So yeah, I mean, he's a career 3.12 ERA in the postseason.
That's solid.
Mm-hmm.
So on the other side of town, if this isn't the ghosts of managers past, Eloy started in right field and Lurie Garcia started at second base today.
Are you sure Pedro Grifol wasn't taken over by the mighty Tony La Russa? Like Tony La Russa just like detached his soul from his body and it just invaded Pedro Grifol's.
It's like in Lord of the Rings when the guy possesses that king and he just ages and looks gross. Uh,
he sees guys having fun and he suddenly gets angry and says not allowed. I mean, luckily in spring training you can play around with that stuff, and there's obviously no real consequence if you lose a game because someone that hasn't played right field is playing in right field. It's just I don't like the idea of the White Sox even entertaining that idea.
Why in the world didn't they just DFA Lori Garcia?
Because they got to pay him, man. At least the Elvis Andrus signing makes him less important.
Why, just like between Lori Garcia and Mike Clevenger, just put that as mistakes and move on.
Jerry ain't gonna do that.
Jerry doesn't do that. That's why Jerry is the worst owner in sports.
Yeah, and it was just his birthday the other day, wasn't it?
Why is it always Chicago teams that have like the worst owners? I mean,
and the ones that live forever.
They do live forever. Virginia is gonna live to be 110, isn't she?
Yeah. Hey, good for her. She's gonna be like Mr. Burns. But it's you look at the White Sox
dental plan. Georgie needs braces.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, it's Mr. Burns. Gillett!
Are they booing? No, they're saying boo in Virginia. Virginia. But yeah, I mean, the White Sox, I don't know what to expect, man. It's a little odd that Tim Anderson is talking about wanting to get an extension done, and does not seem like the White Sox are interested in an extension.
Do you think they see Colson Montgomery as the next guy to take him over? But it's like, look at what Tim Anderson has done for you. Look at all the things that he's been able to do for your team, whether it's, pumping up in the changing the game stuff or winning the batting titles. And, I get it. He's got to be better at defense, but man, like, I would think you would want to at least entertain the idea, but we are talking about extending useful players in this town, so it's kind of a scarcity, I guess.
I just, not to beat this dead horse to death, but, Mike Clevenger, no comment. But the Score has his accuser on, and suddenly he has all kinds of things to say.
Yeah.
It is such a bad look. He's just not a good dude.
If you were that innocent, I don't think you'd be reacting that way. I don't know. I don't know if he did it or not. I'm just saying he's not a good dude, and that was another terrible signing. I mean, Cleveland got rid of him mid-season for a reason.
This team does still have a lot of talent. I just think Pedro Grifol has a big job ahead of him to keep this team on task and competing. and not letting the distractions get the best of them.
He does, but maybe I'm a bit more optimistic because I think Pedro Grifol, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like things in the clubhouse are a lot lighter right now than they were under Tony La Russa. And Pedro Grifol has come out and pointed out all the bad things and the mistakes that they made while Tony La Russa was manager. He saw it firsthand when they lost a lot of games on stupid stuff when he was with the Royals. So, I actually think they're going to have a solid year, but people have to stay healthy because I do think there's a lot of talent on that team. If Eloy and Robert are healthy, that's going to make that lineup pretty damn good. You add in Benintendi and you add in Tim Anderson, and if Yoan Moncada is something, that's a damn good lineup. I'm worried about their depth, and if there are major injuries on that team, they're in big trouble. But I think if they stay any healthier, I think they're going to play more focused baseball. I think they're going to be better fundamentally. So with that talent, I think they can win the division. I really do. Maybe you're not as optimistic, but I'm picking them to win the Central. I am.
They're going to have to prove it.
Which is fair.
The stink of the Reinsdorf family just looms heavy over this team.
If La Russa was still managing, I'd say no way. They're screwed. I just think that Pedro Grifol understands everything that needed to get better. And I think that could make a positive impact. And the division's not good. The Tigers still suck. The Royals still suck. The Twins, you never know what that weird ass team is ever going to do. And the Guardians are going to be their biggest challenge, but they had a lot go right for them last year. Is that going to happen again? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, that team does not have like a roster of proven talent. They played really well last year. I don't know if that's repeatable. We'll see. It could be. And like you said, the White Sox, there's a lot of reasons that it could go right and it wouldn't take a ton. It just, they have the last several years, they've just had so much go wrong that it's hard to picture everything. Everything doesn't even have to go right. It's just everything just can't go wrong. But they've had
the injuries being a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, injuries and just guys playing worst baseball of their career.
Yeah, I mean that too. And I mean, here's where I feel good about the Sox, and here's where I don't feel good. The top of the lineup on paper: Anderson, Benintendi, Moncada, Robert, Eloy, whatever order you want to put those in. That on paper can be one of the very best in the American League. And we saw Eloy hit really well when he did play last year. And I still think Luis Robert has the potential to be one of the most talented, best players in baseball. His talent is off the charts. He can't keep getting hurt. That's the big thing. And you bring Tim Anderson back, and Tim Anderson was one of the guys that made that engine go. And he obviously got hurt last year. And I don't know much about Moncada. I mean, part of me thinks he's kind of a bum, but I do think that the talent is there with him. And it seems like every other year he does well. So did really well in 2019, had COVID in 2020. You can't really blame him for that. 2021 had a good year, not outstanding, but good. Last year was completely off the whack. And I think it was more than just physical ailments. I think it was attitude as well. So is he going to bounce back this year? We'll see. But I think the talent is definitely there. The top of your rotation, I have no doubt Dylan Cease is going to be great. It's the rest of the rotation. Lance Lynn is obviously a really good pitcher, but he's 36 now. We see pitchers drop like rocks, and I'm not saying he's going to drop like a rock, but I do wonder about it. We saw it with Dallas Keuchel.
That's part of my thing is I think that Lance Lynn is going to come back down to earth real quick. And I fear he's gonna have to muscle his way through like John Lester towards the end, where he just threw junk to get outs. And with veteran savvy and junk, that might be the Lance Lynn you get. Maybe not the beginning of the season, but by the end, I think just it's gonna run out of gas.
That's the thing with Lance Lynn, is as good as he is, we've seen him both with the Sox and on the Cardinals. When September rolls around, kind of fizzles out a little bit. So is he going to be able to kind of manage that load as he gets older? That's my biggest concern.
Is Lucas Giolito going to be the pitcher he was last year, or is he going to be
don't know.
the front of the order type of guy? I don't know.
I could see it going either way. I could see him being that all-star. I could see him being just meh again.
And you brought this point up about the Cubs, but I think it fits perfectly. The narrative fits perfectly with the White Sox as well. So you made a point about Ian Happ and Nico Horner, and extensions are just going to cost more the longer you wait.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one player on the White Sox that is going to ring so true and so loudly that's Dylan Cease.
Yep, I knew exactly where you were going with that.
How I can't envision a scenario where the White Sox sign him to an extension.
And you can't do the club-friendly deal stuff with him at this point of his career.
No, why would he?
He would be an absolute fool to do that.
Yeah. And the White Sox are one of the last teams that has never given out $100 million contract. And that list is about to get shorter because the Pirates are on the verge of $100 million deal.
Yeah.
And I just can't envision a scenario where Dylan Cease doesn't get a well over $100 million deal. And I don't envision a scenario where the White Sox are the ones that give it to him. That's a scary prospect because you're a major market team that operates like a small market team.
I mean, this scenario is a little different because I think there was more of a mystery and a much bigger risk with him. But look what Carlos Rodon ended up getting with the Yankees.
Yeah.
Which, again, to be fair, Rodon has spent most of his year battling injuries, and he had one really outstanding year where he was fully healthy for the most part until the end. So that was a bit more justifiable. But, it kind of thing rings true is Carlos Rodon was like one of the original pieces of your rebuild, and the potential was always there. And, obviously you got snippets of the potential, but
with Rodon, you just saw those snippets through the whole life of his contract. And they brought him back. He was a free agent. They brought him back on that 1-year deal. That's when he put it all together. And then continued that afterwards and parlayed that in a 7-year deal.
Yeah.
But Dylan Cease is a different animal. Like, he is on that rookie deal and is performing brilliantly. And the longer you wait, the worse this could be. If you don't sign him an extension sooner rather than later, he's just pricing himself out of ever playing for the White Sox again.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing. I'm not saying this is 100% going to happen, but if you are a pitcher of that caliber and you have gone out and have really just proven yourself as a Cy Young contending pitcher, a top end pitcher, wouldn't you want to test the market and get all the bag you possibly can?
Absolutely. You'd be silly to not.
Because Manny Machado signed a contract before he could potentially opt out. But remember, Manny Machado had already signed the mega deal. So he was just getting addition to the mega deal, basically. Dylan Cease is still on his rookie deal. So, of course, he's going to want that opportunity to get back.
Yep. And he should.
He should, absolutely.
I mean, you have the opportunity to just completely reshape your family financially forever.
Yeah.
I mean, making like a $10 million over a career. Okay, that's nice money, and you can retire and not have to work anymore afterwards, but you're not necessarily setting up generational wealth. Manny Machado has set up generational wealth.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like his kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids, none of them are ever gonna have to work.
Heck, he can start a corporation and get even more wealth.
Yeah. He can just do whatever it is he wants to do forever. It's be smart and optimize your abilities financially.
Yeah.
What do you want to go to next?
Well, this could go down at any moment, but the rumors are pretty strong right now. So maybe it's already happened by the time you're listening to this podcast. So we should probably talk about what you're probably thinking, right? What I'm thinking.
Yeah, Jack Johnson being traded.
I almost sobbed my Jack Johnson jersey.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Johnson was traded, which is a tank move, I think. I don't know. But they essentially gave him away for a guy that has never scored a career goal. But the Blackhawks have decided to sit both Patrick Kane and Sam Lafferty for the remainder of the trade period. And the rumors are that Patrick Kane is willing to waive his no movement clause for one team at this point, which is the New York Rangers.
Yep. And, we speculated early that with the Tarasenko trade that they would be out on Patrick Kane, but not so fast.
But the rumor on the other side is that the Rangers are not willing to give up a first round pick or one of their prime prospects.
Yeah.
And they're really the Blackhawks, if the rumors are true and Kane is only willing to waive his no movement clause to go to the Rangers, the Blackhawks really don't have any leverage at all other than
no, they don't.
Not trading him.
Yeah, that's a bit worrisome. I mean, here's the thing is I'm fine trading him, but I also don't want to get just pennies for him on the dollar. And listen, I know he hasn't been the normal Patrick Kane in terms of numbers, but he's shown that he's still a damn good hockey player, and he's been on fire lately. So, I mean, I would think he would be an important asset to any Stanley Cup winner. The guy's won 3 of them. He knows what it's like to play in a Stanley Cup final. He scored a Stanley Cup game-winning goal, for goodness sake. He's come up clutch in so many different points in the playoff series. So he would absolutely be a great asset to any team looking to further bolster their run. But, the Rangers, to their point, it's like, well, they've already traded for Tarasenko. They've already made some moves. So they would absolutely be going all in with that move. How much are they willing to give up? Well, clearly they have hesitations with it. I mean, frankly, if you had the chance to give me something, if they were able to land one solid prospect in a first round pick, I think that's where you start, because you've gotten first round picks for lesser talents that you've traded away. Trading away Patrick Kane for anything less, it wouldn't feel right. But at the same time, if you're not going to resign him next year, and I don't know if they will or will not, do you really just want to keep him and let him walk for nothing? But I don't know if they'd resign him or not. I don't know. There's a lot of things you have to go through here.
Yeah, and it's a tough place to be in. And it's a similar situation to what Ryan Poles is in, where you have something that everybody in the world knows that you want to sell or trade away. But if you're not getting the value that you had hoped for the product you're trying to move, do you sell at a discount or do you hold steady? Is worst case scenario is Kane plays out the rest of the season and then goes somewhere else next season without any compensation. That's worst
and they play
case.
themselves out of the Bedard sweepstakes.
They're already doing that.
I mean, listen, it's cool that they're playing well. I think that Luke Richardson is a damn good head coach, but stick to the plan, guys.
I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm hoping that the Blackhawks just trade everything not nailed down.
Yeah, exactly. So they can really tank. And I don't like tanking, but you have a chance to get a generational prospect, and if not, one of the top 3 picks in which are also very talented guys. This is about the future. Winning a few meaningless games in a tanking year. Again, I love the way they're playing under Luke Richardson. I think it sets up for a better future, but right now, priority number 1 is putting yourself in the best position possible.
Absolutely. And, and the Blackhawks made a move that helps them out by weaponizing their salary cap space.
Mm-hmm.
They made a trade with the Senators and brought in defenseman Nikita Zaitsev. And by taking on that player, they got a 2023 second round pick and a 2026 fourth round pick. So essentially you just bought a second round pick.
Yeah.
By taking on a player who the Senators want to move to make salary cap room so they could make another trade. That's great. That makes in the next 2 drafts, they have 9 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good.
So I think the Blackhawks are making smart moves, but the Kane situation is a little tough, and we're getting down to the wire. We're recording this on Sunday night, and Friday is the deadline for the trade, and we're starting to see moves start to heat up, and I just hope the Blackhawks don't find themselves in, waiting so long to try to make trades that nothing materializes or everybody's already moved on.
Well, that's what I worry about with this Kane situation.
Yeah, I think the waiting so long for Kane to make his decision really hurt the team. Double hurt it by how long it took him to make his decision and then limiting to one team that he's willing to go to.
Yeah, and I get it. It's not easy to let go. Like, I totally get that, but it does make things a little more complicated.
Absolutely.
And listen, I want to make this clear. I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, I just want to get rid of Patrick Kane. I know a lot of people are emotionally attached to him. All the memories that he brought us, all the good times. I get all that. But we got to think about the future too. We got to think about the well-being of this franchise going forward. It sucks we have to be in this position, but here we are.
I mean, the Blackhawks front office probably would have been smart to go to Kane early and say, listen, look at this as a couple of month vacation, and we're going to re-sign you next year, and even work out framework of a deal.
That would be a win-win.
And
honestly,
say, listen, I know it's a tough decision, but it is not a permanent one. It is a temporary one. Go make a run for a cup. We've got a deal in place, handshake agreement, and you waive that no movement clause early. Allow us the opportunity to trade you to anybody at any time, and we will bring you back. You can retire as a Blackhawk, and those couple of months you spent with that other team will be a funny trivia question in 10 years.
And maybe it'll even get you another Stanley Cup.
But it just did go down that way. And here we are with Patrick Kane just sitting, and we still don't know if he's actually waived his no movement clause or not.
Yeah. I mean, within the next few days, we'll find out. The trade deadline's Friday.
Yep.
We'll see.
But I mean, the team as a whole has just been playing really well. They're playing excellent hockey, and sure, they're not necessarily beating all these top teams, but they're winning enough.
Vegas.
They did beat Vegas.
They beat Dallas. I don't know how good Dallas is this year, but
but they're not, and I mean, they've just really been playing well over the last couple of weeks, and that is not good for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes.
No, and unfortunately, despite the numbers, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of offers for it, but Max Domi has almost 20 goals. Couldn't somebody please just buy high on him? I like Max Domi. I like having him on the team, but imagine if you could get more draft capital with him. And then you resign him next year. He's on a 1-year deal.
Oh, yeah. He loves it here. Is another guy. Be like, hey, we love having you here. We would love to have you back. We would also love to dump you so we can get Connor Bedard and then bring you back next year. Like, I don't know what's so hard about that conversation. If somebody like was like, hey, I know you love being here. You don't want to uproot your family. Can you just like go on a long vacation somewhere and then come back next year?
We'll pay you to stay at the Holiday Inn Suites.
We will pay for you to stay at the La Quinta Inn.
There's continental breakfast. They got waffle maker and muffins and bananas and Fruit Loops in little boxes.
But yeah, the Blackhawks have now fallen to only the fourth best odds for winning the number one overall pick. They're now at 9.5%.
Beating San Jose the other night really wasn't good for that.
Nope.
And that game started so damn late. I actually fell asleep before overtime. So when I woke up and I saw that they won in the shootout, I was kind of like, fuck.
It is fun for the watching aspect of it, but damn, I just stop winning games.
Yeah, I know.
And they're playing the Ducks tomorrow.
Oh shit. God, they're gonna win that game too in like overtime. Fuck.
Yeah. And yeah. Oh my God. And then so tomorrow they play the Ducks, and Tuesday they play the Coyotes.
Motherfucker. God, they're gonna win both those games.
Then the Stars, who are okay. Then they play the Predators, who are not good either.
Yeah, I may or may not go to that game with my dad.
Like, where's all the, where's Boston when you need them?
Yeah, really, what the hell? Play us more, you asshats.
Yeah, like the next game after that is against the Senators.
Can we just can we just pretend, oh yeah, they all got the flu, so we need the Rockford Ice Hogs to play.
The game after that is against the Red Wings. Wait, hold on. When do they play the good teams? Yeah, where Ducks, Coyotes, Stars, Predators, Senators, Red Wings. Uh, then it's the Panthers. There we go. Then the Lightning. There we go. March 11th.
Reports have come in that half the Lightning ate some really bad cheese sandwiches and the dairy was bad, so they're not going to be playing their top guys.
Here we go. Back-to-back games. Lightning, then the Bruins. That's what we need more of. But then we go back to Predators, Coyotes. Then we go Avalanche, Capitals. I need more of those.
This just in, the Bruins, they went out to the bar the other night and got really, really drunk, so they're too hungover to play. So the 2 points goes to the Blackhawks. And you know what stinks? These have been some really fun wins too.
Yeah,
even though the one goal didn't count, that Kane buzzer beater, you had to admit, that was pretty dope.
Yep.
And then you had Dallas score what you thought was the game winner or the game tire at the buzzer, and then it was disallowed. And you were down 3-0 in that game against Dallas.
Yep.
Kane scored 2 more goals. Domi scored the game winner. These have been some fun games. And I'll say it again, I like Luke Richardson. He is a good coach. Couldn't we have kept Colleton just temporarily, be like, hey, yeah, Mr. Richardson, you're going to be our coach next year. This year, we need to tank as much as possible.
Jeremy Colleton would have totally had this team. They would have been so bad that they would have gotten extra odds of winning.
If that were the case, I would have Jeremy Colleton show up to the rink in a general's uniform, and we all call him the Tank Commander.
Oh, the Tank Commander. Let's move on quick to the Bulls. They made a desperation move by signing the recently bought out Patrick Beverley, who is a Chicagoan and was excited to be a Bull. And is Patrick Beverley a bad player? Not at all. I was curious of how he would fit in on this team. And game 1, the Bulls looked really good against the shorthanded Nets team, but just dominated them. Absolute dominated and looked good. And it was nice to see them with a point guard. Game 2 with Patrick Beverley, I don't know. I didn't see the game, but they won. And Patrick Beverley's box score didn't look good, but I wonder if having Patrick Beverley in a real point guard is going to create some consistency with this team.
Well, here's the thing is right now, I'm giving it a little time. And I'm not saying PatBev was like, you know, when they made the move, I was just like, okay. But how damning was it when Patrick Beverley basically said that I'm going to put your max player into place?
I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I love his attitude. I love the energy he brings. He seems to legit want to be here. And he provides good defensive presence, and he doesn't light up the scoreboard in terms of points, but the little things that he does, he can help make an offense flow better. I think that's what a lot of people saw when they saw him coming here. And it's cool to see. This feels like right now, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer. I'm going to let the results speak for themselves as they happen. But what I could totally see this being is just another one of those classic Chicago sports teases where they get that temporary caffeine boost and then it kind of just comes back down to earth. We saw it last year with the White Sox with Andrews and Miguel Cairo. We saw it with Jeremy Colleton coming in after Q was fired. We saw it with Derek King after Jeremy Colleton was fired. We see this stuff happen a lot, and it's an initial boost, and it eventually just kind of fizzles out. And I think Patrick Beverley, no matter what, brings some good things to the Bulls. In the long run, is it going to move the needle much on a team that's already pretty flawed and in a hole? I'm going to wait and see. I'm just going to wait and see because I don't really know if I can say that.
Gary and I had a disagreement about this, and he was saying I was being a negative Nancy by saying I want to wait. And I'm fine to, I'm not dissing the Patrick Beverley signing. It was a good signing.
Doesn't do any harm.
It was a good signing no matter what the outcome.
Right.
But after one game, I'm not going to go all in and suddenly be like, the Bulls are going to do it. I want to see consistency, because for a 1 to 2 game stretch, we have seen the Bulls be able to beat pretty much anybody.
They've beaten the Bucks. They've beaten the Celtics. They've beaten Miami. I know Joel Embiid was on the team, but they did finally beat the 76ers once. And that's the thing. We've seen these 4 or 5 game stretches where the Bulls look like a legitimate playoff contender, and then they fall off again. Yeah. It's kind of, I'm at the point where I don't want to be fooled again. And I'm more than happy to be proven wrong.
I am not going to run up and kick that football that Lucy is holding.
Over and over, it's been pulled away and we fly in the air and twirl.
I want to wait. I want to see a 2 to 3 week stretch before I even start to get hopeful.
Me too. Me too.
If I see a 2 to 3 week stretch where they just look really good,
I'll start to buy in again.
Yep, I will start to buy in. And I'm not being a negative Nancy about it. I'm just trying to be cautiously optimistic. And right now I'm just saying, hey, the first 2 games were good. Let's see how it goes.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I think no matter what, you're better with him than without him. We can agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
It's just how much of that needle, how much does the needle move? Right now, it's a big move, but it could go back again. It's no matter what, I like it, but I'm not suddenly saying here, we're going to the playoffs. We're going to, there's still too many holes on this team, and they still don't match up with teams when it counts. You can win regular season games, but when it counts, when the playoffs are here, it's going to be really difficult with the talent you have to match up with Giannis or Embiid or Jimmy Butler in the Heat or the Celtics. That's a matter of fact. The NBA is a superstar driven league. It's not the MLB, where all you need is a few good bounces and getting hot at the right time, or with football for that matter. It's such a superstar driven league with the NBA. But you know what? If they make a little run and they make the final few months of this season entertaining, then so be it.
Agreed. And we're coming down to the wire, and this team is this conference is terrible for the most part. I mean, you've got a couple of exceptional teams at the top, but overall it's a pretty shitty conference. So you realistically should be able to make the playoffs if you just play some semblance of consistency.
Yes. You echoed my thoughts completely, because you had a lot of winnable games against bad opponents. You could easily have 10 more wins right now. It sucks that you have to look back and say that you lost twice to the Orlando Magic at home. It's those games there that drive you nuts more than anything. I mean, last year was the opposite. Last year, they couldn't beat any good teams, but they beat the living shit out of those teams. This year, we talked about the wins against big teams they have, but then you lose games like that. And that's what's dug you in this hole. I mean, maybe 10 wins is a little too insane. Let's just say you had 5 more wins. If you had 5 more wins right now, you would be, obviously above 500. So being above 500 would put you a lot more into the top 6 seed, non-play-in tournament.
And what's funny is to most NBA fans and people that talk about the NBA, the Lakers are one of the laughing stocks of the league, right? They're the butt of a lot of jokes.
Mm-hmm.
They have a better record than the Bulls.
Yeah, they have one more win.
Mm-hmm. And one less loss. They're one. So just to put that into perspective, but right now the Bulls are like 3 games out of the 8th seed and 4 games out of the 7th seed. I don't think there's a way they can get into the top 6.
They would have to go on a big run, and you would have to have some teams lose some games as well.
Yeah. Getting into the top 7, that's realistic.
Right. Like, you're not going to leapfrog 5 teams into the top 6, most likely.
I mean, you've got the Wizards and Raptors, Hawks and Heat that are all in striking distance. And they're all those teams are within 4 games of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So just by, you're not really leapfrogging. It's just kind of the jumble of the last 23 games of the season.
Right. I'm talking getting into like the top seeds.
Yeah. Getting into the top 6, really, you're going to have to do something exceptional, and you're going to have to expect some teams to lose. And I mean, if a team were to drop out, it's probably going to be the Nets.
Because they traded everything away.
They traded everything away, and they're not a good team.
I mean, the way I see it is the Nets drop down, and I see Miami kind of sliding back up. I think Miami's better than their record shows.
Oh, absolutely. So that really leaves you as, can the Nets fall hard enough and fast enough? I mean, they're significantly better than you. They're 6.5 games better than you, and you've got 21 games left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a chance the Nets fall that hard that fast. So really, the Bulls are going to have to turn this on. Otherwise, they're going to be in that shitty situation of not good enough to make the playoffs, too good to keep their first round pick that's top 4 protected.
Yep. And that's why you wanted all or nothing with the season. You wanted a top 6 playoff team or nothing, really. And being stuck as a play-in tournament team really doesn't do much for you. It really, really doesn't. But, you look at the Bulls record now, 28-33, and you look at where the Nets are at 34-26. There are so many games the Bulls should have and could have won. They could easily be where Brooklyn is right now. Easily. How about those 2 massive blown leads to Indiana?
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 losses to the Orlando Magic. That's 4 games right there. And those aren't the only bad losses of the year, but that's just 4 right there. You win those 4 games, you're at 32 wins. and then you win a few more, you're right there in that top 6. I feel like worst case scenario is they're going to end up as like an 8 seed and they're going to finish with, I don't know, 40 wins. And then it's just, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these games, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day.
What the hell?
Just saying, if they would have done this, they would have won. If they would have done, they didn't. They the record is what the record is, and the Bulls have a lot of work to do if they want to make the playoffs.
You want to know something that's pretty damning too? Have you seen their road record?
No.
It's 10-20. They're 10 games under 500 on the road. I knew the road record wasn't great, but I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't realize it was that horrible.
Let's wrap this up talking a little Bears. Not a lot to talk about. The tag deadline is coming up in a little over a week. Let's see, what is today's date? So
26.
It is, yeah. So we're recording this on Sunday. So it's a week from Tuesday is the deadline to franchise tag players. And that's when we're really going to know who is available for the Bears when free agency opens up shortly after that. Just it's weird that they have this long window of, I mean, it's like a over 2-week window for you to be able to franchise tag players, because they don't typically franchise tag a player until the last day or the last couple of days of that window, because they want to give them more time to, figure out if they can extend them or whatnot, because teams don't like the franchise tag in the most cases either. They would rather have a long-term deal done to allow them cap flexibility.
It's such a lame duck move.
And sometimes though it's what you have to do.
Sometimes it's necessary, yes. It's just, it's not always ideal that you have to do it.
What's going to be curious is that the New York Football Giants, they have not worked out a long-term deal with either their quarterback or their running back, and Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. And Danny Dimes is asking for like $35 million a year.
Jeez.
Or was it 45? He's asking for a ridiculous amount of money. And the Giants are just like, nah, dog. Sorry. That's
a no for me, dog. Randy Jackson.
I mean, when you see Randy Jackson, you're not going to knock at his autograph. Have you seen Step Brothers?
Yep.
Why do you have Randy Jackson's autograph on a sword?
See Randy Jackson, you're not going to get his autograph.
Yeah, let's see. What kind of contract is he asking for? Sorry, he's asking for $45 million a year. $45 million a year for Daniel Jones. And Saquon Barkley is not close to a deal with the Giants as an extension. So you can only cap or tag one dude. You're probably tagging your quarterback. And
even though Saquon Barkley's the more talented at his position.
Correct. Because it's harder to replace a quarterback than it is a running back.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's the quarterback's the most important position, and not to mention that even though it was a lot of moving pieces and it wasn't really him carrying on his back, they did win a playoff game with Danny Dimes under center.
Right. So that's an interesting situation going on. But for the most part, we'll see. So I'm not expecting a Saquon Barkley to be franchise tagged, so he will be available. I don't know if the Bears make a move there, but the more quality free agents that are available benefits the Bears because it forces teams to spread out their wealth of where they're spending money and not just compete on a handful of talented guys with the Bears. Even though the Bears have the resources to beat out anybody with their with their salary cap situation, you don't want to have to be bidding against every other team to get players.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the flexibility, but if you're overspending now, not worrying about it, well, it's going to become a problem eventually.
Right. So it's going to be a situation that I think a lot of Bears fans are going to be disappointed after the trade or the tag deadline, because there's going to be a lot of guys that you're like, I wanted the Bears to get him. And with the tag, it essentially says, nah, the Bears aren't going to get him.
Right.
But on the other hand, you're going to see a lot of cap casualties this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're looking just for the 2023 teams, is half the league is right at or over the salary cap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 13 teams are over the cap. And
Are the Saints one of those teams?
yes.
I know.
So
they're ridiculously over the cap.
The Jets are like, I'm sorry, the Steelers are right at the cap. They're $11,000 under the cap. So they can't even sign their rookie class. So that's 14 teams. The Packers have enough money to sign their draft class, but that's it.
Didn't they just restructure a few of their deals of their veterans?
They did. And they renounced some of the contracts, like Robert Tonyan. They voided his contract. They got rid of some guys.
Yeah.
But if you look at teams that with less than $10 million in cap space or over the cap, you're at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 teams out of 32. So you're going to see a lot of cap casualties, and that's going to bode well for the Bears, because sometimes you have some really good players that end up making or becoming available because their team can't afford them anymore.
Well, and also this too is, couldn't you also say that not only do they become available on the free agent market, but teams might be willing to strike a deal with you via trade to get some of that salary cap off the books? And I'm not talking about minor players. I'm talking about like more notable players.
I mean, it's a possibility.
What's the Bengals cap situation like?
Well, they're about to cut Joe Mixon for a cap casualty.
That's true.
Bengals actually are not so bad. They have $35 million of space.
Okay, because I mean, one of my thoughts was, I honestly didn't really know much about the Bengals cap situation. Is, couldn't you say like, hey, you need some cap room? We could take T. Higgins off your hands. We'll give you some draft picks. But
I don't know how that whole situation is going to play out, because they have cap space, but they also have a lot of guys that are going to be due an extension.
Joe Burrow being one of them.
Starting with Joe Burrow.
And Joe Burrow is going to make a stupid amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I wonder if he's going to get like a Patrick Mahomes lifetime contract.
I think so. I would definitely see them going that route.
I mean, it's funny because you're like, man, Patrick Mahomes got so much money, but Danny Dimes is asking for how much Patrick Mahomes makes next year. So you're like, man, in a couple of years, you're going to be like, oh, that Patrick Mahomes deal is super affordable.
Which is why if we do indeed go forward with Justin Fields and we do indeed extend him, George McCaskey is going to be looking to just reward Justin with some deep dish pizzas.
Here's some coupons for free delivery from DiGiorno.
DiGiorno. George, these are pieces of notebook paper and purple crayon. Hey, I mean, you're gonna have to pay for both Justin Fields and Arlington Heights.
You're gonna have to sharpen those purple crayons because you can't buy new ones.
George has an entire desk. He just spends an entire day in the office with like that little like crayon sharpener that's in the back of the boxes, just sharpening the crayons.
It sharpens the crayons or else it gets the hose again.
Someone knocks on the door. Mr. McCaskey, what? I'm very busy here.
Much to do. But the last thing I wanted to talk about with the Bears, though, is I started watching some film on the quarterbacks. And I haven't watched a ton yet, but from what I've seen so far, Bryce Young is far and away the best quarterback in this draft. And
thank God we got the first overall pick.
And I've been letting the commentators and draft gurus and try to sell me on other guys. And Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this draft. Does that mean he's going to be the best in the NFL? Nobody can say. None of us have a crystal ball, but the best body of work out of any quarterback far and away is Bryce Young. And sure, are there going to be teams that go, not worth it to trade up to number one because of what we have to give up? And we'll settle on another quarterback. That's a possibility. But there's going to be at least one team that goes, you know what? Fuck it. We love this guy. We have to have him.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be that lunatic that owns the Indianapolis Colts.
Well, he's tweeting pictures of him on a bear, so that's a good sign, right?
Like, he's a lunatic, and he's going to be like, that's my guy. That is my guy. And I think that ends up being the sweet spot for the Bears, because you're going to get another good draft pick and not lose out on an elite player.
You know what I really want to do, honestly, is make it even better for us. And I want to sneak into Jim Irsay's house, and I want to go just into Jim Irsay's house, and everybody involved in the Indianapolis Colts at night, the whole front office, the ownership, everybody. Just, I want to, like, in their sleep, like, hypnotize them with like a clock, like, you will trade up with the Bears, you will give us a giant haul.
I think it could happen. I'm bracing myself for, a haul where, Bears trade from 1 to 4 and pick up the Colts second rounder and their fourth rounder. Like, is that a haul? Technically, I mean, what you have to consider a haul is you take the trade value chart, and instead of having equal value, you get 25% more value. That would be a haul.
Yeah. I like to picture the trade value chart as like some crumpled up piece of paper that you take out of your pocket. You're trying to use a ruler to like line everything up. Oh, I can barely read this. It's so old.
So I think somebody's going to trade up, And I am starting to think that the Carolina Panthers are going to be a team that's going to get antsy and want to trade up.
I mean, the teams you're hearing the most about being linked to the Bears pick often are the Colts and the Panthers.
It's as you go along, you start piecing things together. So you're like, so the Panthers are a team. I'm like, I think they're going to want to sign a veteran. And the rumors are that they were interested in Carr, but Carr wants too much money. So they're going to pass. So I think they're going to start to realize, you know what? We just got to bite the bullet and go up and get a quarterback.
They've been doing the veteran thing for a few years since Cam Newton fizzled out, and it really hasn't worked. I mean, look at all the quarterbacks they've had over the past few years. They had Teddy Bridgewater, who was fine, and then you had Sam Darnold, and then you had what's his face? Baker Mayfield, right? They had Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
And then those are the main guys I can think of off the top of my head. But like, point being is they've, like the Colts, they've tried that veteran quarterback thing the past few years, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't resulted in anything meaningful. I see them trading up and drafting, and then signing a veteran to play in front of him? Sure, but not as the main solution.
I'm looking here. So I said if the Colts moved up, you probably are not getting an extra first round pick. But if they swap first round picks, so Bears move first to fourth, and they give you a second and a fourth, that is looking like, based on the our friend Brad Spielberger's from Over the Cap, his draft evaluation or his draft value chart, you're looking at the Bears getting a value of, let's see, 20. You're looking at 1161, like a 38% value on top of it, which is good.
Yeah.
And you recoup that second round pick that you traded for Chase Claypool.
And you stay within the top 5.
And you stay in the range of being able to get the guy you wanted anyway.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's realistic. I mean, like we talked about in the show in the past, we've seen trade scenarios people come up with where the Bears just get the moon, and you have to be realistic.
Right. I mean, could you see a scenario where they also throw in a role player?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. Like a veteran cornerback. They're not going to throw in an elite guy. They're not going to.
No.
They're not going to throw in an elite guy, but to throw in a role player, especially a defensive player that played for Eberflus that he would like to have back.
Hey, if we got one of their backup role-playing safeties or something, or a cornerback to give us a little more depth.
That's a depth cornerback probably is realistic. I mean, if you are trading with Carolina, who sits at 9, they're going to have to throw in an additional first round pick plus some.
Right.
I mean, they're a team that's going to have to throw in a first and a second, or maybe more to do that. But
maybe
then
a first and a third.
I think first, like swapping first this year, and see the key for the Bears, like the ideal situation for the Bears would be to get an extra pick this year and then an early pick next year.
I agree.
So that might be if you could get from Carolina the 9 pick, next year's 1, this year's 2. Then maybe even next year's 3 or 4, like probably 4. So then you would get a second rounder this year, and then you'd have an extra 4th next year and an extra 1st next year. That's where you start to be able to really optimize your your draft positioning, is by having additional picks.
Right. And again, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I think having those additional picks is good, not only for draft positioning, but it gives you more ammo to pull off a trade. I'm just really in the camp of, if the Bears really want to take a big step next year, I think they're going to need a trade for a notable asset. I think whether it's offensive or defensive, I just think they're going to have to make a trade, as well as drafting and signing guys.
I mean, the thing is when you watch the NFL draft, veterans get traded for very little draft capital because those draft picks are more valuable than a valuable player because of the financial implications. If you have to pay a guy, if you in a salary cap situation, if you have to pay a guy $10 million and you're like, well, then he's worth a 4th round pick, because somebody's like, well, he's older, he makes a lot of money, we'd rather have that 4th round pick. The Bears might be able to deal with some teams that are like, hey, we know that they're willing to move off of this player. We've got the cap situation where we can take that on.
DeAndre Hopkins, 3rd round pick.
You know what's funny? I make fun of the Bears fans because of the crazy draft picks that are the draft situations that they are mocking up. The Bears getting the next 6 first rounders from the Colts and DeForest Buckner.
And rewriting history so we get Peyton Manning.
Yeah, it's Peyton Manning sits out the Super Bowl and the Bears win. Like the Cardinals fans are doing the same thing with Hopkins. Like, they think they're going to get multiple 1st round picks for him.
No.
I'm like, no.
Not happening.
And the thing, he's very good, but he's also coming off a PED suspension.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a 3rd rounder is more than fair.
If we could get him for a 3rd rounder, I'd say do it.
I mean, it is your quarterback, or your wide receiver room good enough right now? No.
Hell no.
But you have Claypool and Mooney, who are very talented. You've got Velus Jones, who took steps forward, and he's got speed to burn. If you brought in DeAndre Hopkins, I think that solidifies and makes those 4 guys as one unit a whole lot better.
Bring in Hopkins and draft another elite receiver, and I think you're looking pretty damn good.
I mean, I think bringing in Hopkins probably negates you drafting an early wide receiver and pushes that need off until next year or the year after, probably next year. And that's not a bad situation. It's sometimes you're going to have to fill stopgaps. And if you just get a good stopgap, DeAndre Hopkins is a very good stopgap, but eventually you're going to want to have a stud wide receiver in there.
Yeah, I do feel, though, that I wouldn't mind bringing in a pretty damn good guy via the draft, even if you did get Hopkins. I mean, I just feel like you can't have enough of it right now. And if Chase Claypool is your number 4, then I think you're feeling pretty good. right? I mean, if you
Yeah,
have Hopkins, Mooney, and another elite receiver and ahead of him,
it's just there are no Jamar Chases in this draft.
no, there's not. There's not.
I mean, I guarantee that there's going to be a couple of wide receivers in this draft that come out and are exceptional, but
Jamar Chase changes games on his own.
But they've all of these guys, there's no surefire guys. Like when Marvin Harrison Jr. comes out next year, that's a surefire guy. You're like, that guy is surefire. Watch him. That guy is a surefire guy. There's no surefire wide receivers in this draft. There's some nice ones, and there's like, oh, this guy has elite physical abilities. This guy runs amazing routes. This guy does this. This guy does that. But none of them are like, don't have their warts. Oh, they run great routes. They're small. They didn't take over games. This guy had injury concerns. This guy played against weak competition. They've all got warts. So it's a little scarier to be like, oh, and I'm gonna have to spend a first round pick on this guy. And the part of the problem is the best guys are going to be gone in the first round. The earliest you're going to be picking a wide receiver is if you trade and get an additional second with that second round pick. That would be the earliest you're picking a wide receiver, unless you really trade back and you draft somebody in around 15.
Yeah.
But I am optimistic the Bears are going to be able to make a good trade with this number 1 overall pick. And I'm starting to feel warmer and warmer about getting a good haul, but it's going to be a realistic haul. You know, they're not going to get, you know, an elite player and multiple first round picks. So everybody just needs to kind of calm their tits.
I didn't think we were going to be saying calm our tits on this show, but hey, that's a good way to end it, right?
If you have that on your bingo card, then there you go.
Good on you. We'll send you a coupon not written in crayon.
Free delivery of DiGiorno's pizza.
You said DiGiorno. That's great.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.